Gory Days are here to stay, the 80s horror show. Take a stroll down memory's lane, it's time to start the show. The Gory Days, the Gory Days, the Gory Days, the Gory Days.
Welcome to the Gory Days, the show where we take a stroll down memory lane to remember our favorite movies, horror movies from the 1980s and early 1990s. Welcome back. It's been a while, but not much has changed here at the Gory Days. We've been watching a lot of fun movies and getting them ready to post them here on the podcast, and I'm excited to see all of you out there have been following us on Instagram and Twitter. It's always exciting to see a small following going for something that everyone should love, frankly. The camp, the wonderful stories, the movie monsters, the makeup effects, the talent that goes into making these 80s horror movies and some early 1990s horror movies, like the one that we're talking about today. But before we get into any of that, I have a guest here that once again also hasn't been here in a while. I think he hasn't been here since the first episode, which was Pumpkinhead. That's right. Yeah. Our seminal episode, our maiden voyage. You may or may not remember him, but here is...
No, you remember me.
Here he is. Mike Holyland, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yeah, it's ever since that first episode, my fame has gone to my head. I'll say that.
I think that was back in October of last year, right on Halloween was when we tried to release that.
Right. People are stopping me in the streets as soon as I say something. Hey, you're the Pumpkinhead guy.
You're the Pumpkinhead guy. You're the guy who talked about the movie Pumpkinhead.
Yes, it's me. Thanks. So then I sign a quick autograph and then...
That's really nice of you. So you're not the kind of person that isn't above everyone else.
No. I'll sign. You know, unless I'm like really busy or something.
I've been living here for almost 2 years, and I still haven't run into anybody on the street, like anyone famous. I haven't recognized anyone, and I worked in Beverly Hills for a couple months. Yeah, I don't know. Have you?
No, I don't think so. No. I saw Larry David once, but it was like he was supposed to be there, so it was...
Wait, where?
He was...
Like a Starbucks?
No, this was like, I was just happened to be on the Hollywood Walk of Fame when he was like unveiling a star for...
Oh.
Was it Ted Danson or Ted Danson's wife? I don't want to know, something like that.
Larry David was unveiling Ted Danson's star?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe his wife. Don't quote me on this.
Miss Danson?
Miss Danson,
I don't know about Ted Danson's
Right.
wife's filmography or TV proclivity, but okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You were on Hollywood Boulevard and you just happened to see that?
Yep.
That's funny because something else on Hollywood Boulevard relating to stars. I'm sure you heard about the Trump star getting defaced.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then the Russian soldier showing up to protect it.
No, I haven't heard about that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That was like a satire.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. That these two, I think, like, you know, a number of people dressed in full Russian gear set up like flags and like, police tape, and we're like, we are protecting this, which is pretty great.
That's good.
Yeah. So what have you been up to? I mean, good God, it's so hot out, and I don't know if it's ever going to cool down. There was like that weekend
Global warming is real, man.
It really, God, it's like it was 113 degrees. It's insane. But this isn't the show where we talk about the weather. This is the show where we talk about horror movies.
Right.
So remind me, what's your relationship to horror? Did you watch a movie too young, or?
No, I've just... So previously on the Gory Days... I'm a big fan of good stories, and a lot of horror movies, unfortunately, don't have that. Some do. Some totally do.
That's right.
But, some are like, meh.
Yeah, so for you, it comes down to story. So, like, I don't know, elaborate on that. Are there good horror stories and bad horror stories, and what makes them for you, personally?
Yeah, so, I feel like if there's a good moral out of the story, I feel like there's, if I come out of it changed in some way, like, oh, this is fantastic, then that's a good story.
That's something to look forward to. Personally speaking, I don't know. It's like I've been in the time since the last episode and today, I've been studying like screenwriting and things, just like, as a hobby. And there was a book that I read that mentioned the difference between a character's internal need and their external need. That the external need is all plot driven, and that, it's like we need to get the MacGuffin before the villain can. We have to get the talisman before the bad guys can, or whatever. Or we have to get the map off the back of the Declaration of Independence. Right. It doesn't matter, but it's external, and it doesn't really feed into anything that the main character just like personally needs to realize. The internal need is like, Well, yeah, they need to go get that MacGuffin or whatever, but what they really need to realize is that they are capable of doing this all by
It
themselves,
was
and they
inside
don't.
them all along.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. It's like, in the movie when the all is lost moment happens, and the hero's like, "Oh no, I'm never gonna get the thing," and it's like, "Well, the thing you needed was inside you all along," and it sounds campy.
Dorothy
and
was
stuff.
right.
I mean, it sounds campy, but like
Yeah,
hearing
no,
it on
that makes a really good movie, to be
Well,
honest.
the reason is that it's because until the hero can realize their internal need, they will never be able to achieve that external need. It's only when they realize after that all is lost moment that it's like, I have the power within me, that now they're free to beat the villain, unencumbered.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really like is the character growth. Like if you see the movie and it's kind of like, oh, the same people are
Yeah.
the beginning and the end, it's kind of like, okay.
But I feel like that's something that doesn't appear in horror because
Not so much.
Well,
no.
because a lot of the time the protagonists are going to die. There isn't going to be like a growth or anything. There isn't something for someone to better themselves with. Pumpkinhead is a rare example where the father does, in a roundabout way, learn a lesson about
exactly.
revenge and
Right.
wishing, ill will on people. But this one today
this
that we're
one
talking about.
does not at all.
No, I don't think anybody really learns anything except for maybe the villain, but he doesn't really get to do anything with it. I don't.
We learned that bats are creepy, I guess.
Yeah, whatever. So do you remember what like the first horror movie you watched was? I was asked that the other day and I couldn't remember.
I don't really remember, but the one that's strongest in my mind from the earlier one is actually two. Scream is probably the first one I saw.
Oh, that's a fun one to watch
Yeah.
because that's kind of like a meta one that
Right,
tries
right.
to
Yeah.
unwrap other slasher movies. So
I didn't get the
I
reference.
can
too.
imagine. It must have been confusing.
Absolutely. And then the other one that like really scared me as a child was I think Halloween or the Mike Myers one.
Sorry, did you hear that?
Yeah, it was some creaky.
Sound like a
yeah.
door creaking or so the Halloween Mike Myers?
Yeah,
Michael Myers?
Michael Myers. And not the Canadian actor.
People have been making jokes about that for so long. Honestly, it's like I think they appeared at the same time. Mike Myers on SNL or Second City and Michael Myers in the '88 horror movies. But did you see they're making another one?
No.
Yeah, there was a new trailer. I don't know if it was at Comic-Con or before. I think it was before Comic-Con. But yeah, it's a new trailer that has Jamie Lee Curtis in it again, and it's hilarious. It's supposed to be a direct sequel to the original Halloween.
Oh.
So it's supposed to be like erasing all
Like,
the other movies
right
that came
what
after.
happened.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Like I think it's like 20 or 30 years have passed, but it's still the same movie and it's the same Jamie Lee Curtis and it's the same everything. But it's called Halloween. So now officially the official chronology of the film goes Halloween from 1988 and then Halloween from 2018.
And then nothing in between.
No, you just
That's not
watch
canon.
Halloween and then Halloween. It's not Halloween 2, and they really do erase, like, honestly, I don't know how far you got into this series, but
I just watched the first one.
there's, like,
for me,
psychic-
this movie's perfect.
yeah, there's like psychic powers and like a little girl, and it just gets totally crazy by Halloween 4, and then Halloween H2O, where, it's Halloween 20 years later, was a mess, and yeah, it was a mess of a franchise, but... So as far as Gory Days news, I recently went to the Midsummer Scream in Long Beach. I'd never been to a horror podcast or a horror convention or anything like that before, but it was pretty cool.
What was your favorite part?
Well,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'll get there. It's just like generally I wrote down some things and I'm going to try to remember some of the things that I noticed. And specifically, the one thing that jumps out to me is that a lot of people were in costume, like any convention. I don't know. Have you ever been to a con?
I don't think so.
Like even like a tech conference or anything like that? Just like where there's a big warehouse full of exhibitors?
The people don't dress up for tech conferences.
Right, but you've been to a thing like
Sure,
that?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for the listener, if you've never been to anything like this before, an organization will rent out a convention center, which essentially is just several connected enormous halls with some theaters and maybe some smaller conference rooms. But the main event is always the exhibitor hall. And for this one, at the Long Beach Convention Center, they separated two halls. One was all dark and, only lit by black lights and lasers and smoke. And it was just like really... It was where they had all of their like mazes and mini things like that, which I don't do. I don't like the mazes. Have you ever been to like Not Scary Farm?
Yeah. I've done those mazes. Yeah, not
You've done them?
Sure.
Like by yourself or with a group?
No, with the group of my friends. It was I think we did in high school.
I've never done it. It is
All the cool kids were doing it.
it's just too scary for me. But that was something else I learned is like Not Scary Farm was a huge exhibitor there. They had this big centerpiece, and I guess the entire thing was hosted by Six Flags has a version of Not Scary Farm. It's like Scream Fest or something like that. Universal has one, Hollywood Horror Nights. They all happen around the same time, around Halloween time. But lots of people in costumes, and a lot of people, there's two kinds of people in costumes there. Well, there's three kinds of people. There's people like me who are not in costume. There's people who are in costume and are just there to, smile and say hi and take pictures and look at things. And then there's other people in costume who are like practicing to be at Not Scary Farm or like in character. Oh my God, it's so annoying where they're like someone's dressed as a zombie and they're in full zombie mode and they're just like, and like, there's the people with...
Dude, I'm just trying to ask some questions.
Oh my God, I almost like yelled at one of them just because I was hungry and I was like trying to get somewhere and they were just in my way. And another thing that is bizarre, so they had Krampus walking around. Krampus is like based on it's a folklore thing that's like an offshoot, like an antithesis to Santa Claus, where it's like if you're a good boy, Santa Claus gives you, gifts and things, but if you're a bad boy, Krampus kidnaps you and eats you. It's from like German folklore kind of thing, and it was made into a horror comedy last year or a couple years ago.
Horror comedy, okay.
Yeah, so there's this guy on stilts dressed as this big, scary Santa Claus-looking thing, Krampus, and he had... this is why I can't tell if he was hired by the event or whatever, because he had a mixture of what I had to imagine were just kids, just children, and little people dressed as scary elves. Like, running around him and near him and like sneaking up on people and standing behind people and creeping them out. And I felt really bad because it was like, well, these are little people and they're using the fact that they're little people to scare me. And at one point, so there's them and there's other regular little people who are just here attending the event that like I turned and there was like a family and I was startled because just of their height.
Oh, man.
And I realized this is exactly why you don't use little people to be scary by being little. Like they're using the fact that they're not in my normal eye line to scare me. And these other people are just people.
That is awkward.
And for a second, I experienced like that microcosm of like, oh, this is why little people...
How did little people become the politically correct term? That sounds more offensive to me.
Does it? I'm pretty sure that's... oh, God.
No, I think it is.
Yeah.
But like, was there a convention and then they're like, we got to go with this.
There might be a union, like a Jesse Jackson representative who's like this. Oh, well, for a second there, I almost made it offensive.
If I was a short-statured individual, I think I would rather be called a dwarf.
A dwarf?
I think so. Dwarf sounds like mythical or something.
That's what I'm saying. It makes you sound like the other. No, I think that makes you sound like a different species of person, like a sub-person.
Kind of cool, though. You gotta admit, like Lord of the Rings epic.
I think it's still called dwarfism because there's giantism and dwarfism,
right.
But I don't know. I think it's like, gender identity. It just comes down to the individual and how they choose to identify as a little person. Because once again, it's like, I'm just a person who happens to be little, like,
right.
Or diminutive. Yeah.
What about like a short-statured individual?
Yeah, it's like calling someone, it's like, oh, a black guy. It's like, well, is that important or is he a guy? Is he just a human being? Yeah. That's funny. I didn't mean to make this into like a political soapbox, but so that was interesting. A lot of people in costumes, and the people like a zombie doll girl who's just gonna stand in the middle of the floor and be as motionless as possible because that's creepy.
Like the Ring, kinda?
Yeah, exactly. And one that honestly I saw him multiple times and he just pissed me off every time I saw him was this rotund gentleman who had...
Again, I don't know what that means.
Oh, round, heavy set.
Gotcha.
Who had the body of Danny DeVito.
So those people need to get
No, God, no, that's not what I'm saying. That's not why he made me mad. What made me mad was not his body shape, but it is important for the stories because what he was dressed as was like a combo. He was like a crossover between the Penguin from Tim Burton's Batman Returns with Danny DeVito. Right. So he had like that costume body, but it was with the color scheme and makeup and everything of Pennywise the Clown.
Okay.
Old Pennywise, not the new one, but like the Tim Curry one. And he would just... I found him all over the place, and what he would do is he would just kind of find a pillar to stand up against and hold his little balloon and just stare straight ahead. And just stare straight ahead, and no one would really interact with him, and he would just stand there, and I would go somewhere else, and I would come back, and he would still be there. And I was just like, why do you pay money to come to these things? Like, people aren't even taking pictures of him.
Is he a paid actor? Or
I assume no,
so
because he had a wristband thing.
Just stand there. That's
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's a performance piece.
That's true. It's just like, I guess there's people who, because that's something that I've always found hard for me at Comic-Con and cons in general is I really do want to dress up, but if I do, I want to be respectful to who I'm dressed up as. So it's like, I like to be in character if I'm going to be a character. So it's like, if I'm dressed as, Nightwing, I'm not going to be doing I was going to say cartwheels, but that's probably something Nightwing would do. He was an acrobat. But I'm not going to be doing things that, if I was a big giant monster, I'm not going to be seen playing Boggle on my phone or something like that. I want to be in the zone, which is funny because I resent them when I see them walking around, and I'm like, geez, get over yourself. So yeah, that was an experience. What were some of the other things I remembered? Yeah, a lot of kids of all ages, like itty bitty babies, toddlers, like grade school kids. And you could see that they were on various levels of comfort, like with this horror thing. I don't know. Did you ever my experience with that is going to like Blockbuster and very trepidatiously walking through the horror section and looking at all the boxes and things like that, or like going to the Halloween store and tiptoeing through the masks and looking at all the scary masks and things like that. I loved being near it, but I was terrified of it, and if my parents tried to throw me into it, I don't think I would have enjoyed that. Did you have any kind of experience with that as a kid?
I definitely like the box of Chucky.
Oh,
for some reason.
You liked it?
No. I'm saying, like, when I was walking through Blockbuster when I was a kid,
Yeah.
the Chucky box would always kind of like, he was always looking at me weird,
Yeah, no.
But apart from that, wasn't, like, that's the only one I could think of. I was like, I don't want to go through that.
I just wonder if I'm the only one that experienced it, or if it's like, a universal thing of being like really interested, but like from 50 yards away, and something that you're terrified of. Like, I have a memory of being in a waiting room somewhere as a kid, and there being an ad for Freddy vs. Jason on like the newspaper, and me just like staring at it and studying it from literally like 2 seats away, and just being obsessed with it.
Yeah, so the people who find that the most scary are actually the ones who enjoy it the most. They've done some studies on it, and the more fear you feel of it, the more you enjoy it, and that's kind of the kick.
What studies? What do you mean?
I forgot I was listening to some, because the Penn Jillette podcast, and he brought on this this PhD who was like an expert in he was studying people with various levels of psychopathic tendencies.
Ooh.
And she got into like what is fear and why people are attracted to it in some ways, and the people who are most scared of like these scary movies are the ones who are into it the most. It's kind of
Did they say why in their study? Why they thought?
She might have. I don't remember.
Okay, I guess science. I don't know. Like that conclusion. I don't know. Is science expected to come up with a conclusion for the results, or
Sometimes.
is that for artistic interpretation?
I mean, there's like, there's a strong correlation, and then like, what's the hypothesis for this? Or
Yeah.
what's, like, why is this happening? But
Well, that's interesting because, like, I can imagine why somebody who loves being afraid seeks out horror, but it's like, how do you know that when you're like a young person, and you just know, like I don't like being afraid. I'm trying to imagine like a person who's like the inverse of me, where I don't like being spooked and like jump out and like going and then
Which
those
is exactly why
endorphins
you
and
like
laughing.
it.
No, what I like is the like unnerving, and this is something I realized when I was at the convention yesterday, is like a lot of the things at the convention represent just things that are amazing about horror, and I have an appreciation and respect for it, but it's not why I personally come to horror. And what I refer to is like at the convention, most of the people there are either artists making like posters or T-shirts based on their favorite things, but there are also makeup artists there who are like teaching classes and like honestly really impressive full body like alien women standing there like that they're actively working on, and people can come by and like ask questions and things, and costumes, props, just like, you know, these amazing is that happening with you or just me?
I don't know.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, props, these like not photorealistic, but honestly, like you're standing there and it looks like a person. And like they had a Chucky doll. They had 3 versions of it at one of these booths. They had Chucky as he appears, like pristine out of the box. Chucky from like Bride of Chucky when he's all scarred and messed up and things, and then like charred to a crisp Chucky from the end of the first one. Yeah, so for me, what I like about horror isn't, like I said, I can appreciate all of the work that goes into all of those things, but what I like about it is not the creature effects and not the, you know, makeup and how well it looks. It's the psychological horror of it. It's like that horror, in my mind, is a genre that can examine things about the human condition that I wonder about and, you know, muse about and think about writing my own stories about. You know, like what lengths would a father go to protect his son or protect his family? Like what would he really do to himself or maybe his fellow man? Or it's like what would any of us do if faced with a survival, like, you know, apocalypse world? It doesn't even have to be zombies, just like, you know, what would you do when society breaks down? That's what I like about horror, is examining, you know, the things that we...
Like the dystopic part of it? Or...
Yeah, just because, like, we are, as a people, just wrapped up in this contract that we all sign every day, and there's no... Like, yeah, there are laws to keep us from doing, like...
Purge.
Yeah, like, obviously reprehensible or terrible things, but I'm talking about just, like... And not common courtesy, like, not the things that we do to keep each other healthy, but just, like... I don't know. I can't think of any examples. I don't want to break any laws, but I just don't want... There are just some moments where it's like, why am I respecting this person? Like, they're clearly trying to get my money. Or why am I still talking to them even though, like, I don't know.
You don't want to be rude.
I don't want to be
You're
rude.
probably never going to see that person again.
But why do I have to do these social contract things if they don't benefit them and they don't benefit me and none of...
Why
and
do we play this game?
Like standing in an elevator and like making small talk with the person in the elevator. I hate that, but when people do it to me...
Is that the proper etiquette? I thought you were supposed to just like stand there and look at your number until it gets...
It's funny, what I've done for years is like I try to subvert the social contract and I look up when I go into an elevator.
Right.
Whether we're going up or down, I look straight up. That's what I do.
Okay. And then stare at the little number thingy and go, yeah, finally my turn.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But yeah, some people occasionally, you know, will chat you up. They'll ask, you know, like, how's your day going? Or if they see anything in your hands, they'll comment on that. And I will respond in kind. And I guess it's to avoid awkwardness,
Right.
which is the biggest, you know, consequence to not following this contract. But, yeah. Anyway, so it was really fun going to the con, and I even managed to come out of my shell and interview some people. So
Nice.
over the next few episodes, I'll be splicing them in during the break, just for people that are interested in finding. Like, I met somebody who makes masks. I met somebody who makes T-shirts. Somebody who does like suspended animation bugs, which was really cool. She mentioned that she has to boil the bugs first and then put them in this epoxy solution, and then
Pretty metal.
yeah, that's what I thought. I thought that was extreme. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on that? Any other ideas or anything on cons or horror or groups of people or hordes?
No, I think I want to check it out maybe next time.
Yeah.
We'll do something.
Yeah, Midsummer Scream in Long Beach, and then Scare LA is another one that everyone was talking about that I've never heard of or been to, but ideally I'll probably be going to a lot of them now.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. But without further ado, we should talk about the movie that we watched today.
We really should. We've been putting that off.
Yeah, we really have. So this movie came out in October of 1990, Stephen King's Graveyard Shift.
So I'm guessing this is okay. Obviously, it's before Halloween because that's October 31st. But
Oh, like before the movie Halloween or before?
no. I'm saying like they were targeting.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It was like the weekend before Halloween. It was a Friday, October 26th, 1990. A great time to release a horror movie.
Right.
Which is funny because Brad Dourif makes an appearance in this movie. He's the exterminator, and he's also Chucky in Child's Play.
Really?
He's Charles Lee Ray.
Wow.
And so he showed up in Child's Play 2 in November, a month after this. So
Popular.
yeah, wild time to be Brad Dourif. Seriously. So, like I said, it was released in October of 1990 with a budget of $10,500,000. So a lot of the movies that we've done leading up to this usually have much, much, much smaller budgets. And so that was something I was trepidatious about when we started this, is like, did I pick too good a movie? So most of the movies that we talk about on here have much, much, much smaller budgets, typically being more indie-oriented. This one was very different. $10 million with actors like, let's see, what was his name? David Andrews, Stephen Mock, Brad Dourif, like we said, who was hot off of Child's Play, so he couldn't have been cheap at the time. Especially, he's basically like a cameo in this movie with how much he does and says and influences the plot. But I thought that was interesting. And I did have another movie that it released against, Jacob's Ladder, with Tim Robbins.
Oh.
Did you ever see that?
No.
Me neither, but I've heard a lot of really good things about it.
Things about it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be another one of those like psychological thrillers. And lastly, The Stand re-released in May earlier this year. So it was, Stephen King was hot on the mind of a lot of people. And Hollywood has this history of like ebb and flow. It's like this sine graph with, is that it? Is that a
No, that's
sign?
the thing. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like a sine graph with, I'm trying to introduce more mathy things. Math. It's like a sine graph of people being into Stephen King and then just completely forgetting that he exists for a few years. And right now, we're in an upswing. Stephen King is on top of the freaking world. It just came out. Molly's Game, or was it Gerald's Game? One of those two was on Netflix.
Yeah, he's got the Gunslinger.
The Gunslinger movie, and Castle Rock just premiered last week on Hulu. The second episode, I think, was on there with Bill Skarsgård, taking place in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine, that Stephen King references in a lot of his books,
Like
including this one.
Including
this one. Yeah, Jane mentions that she's from Castle Rock, which is a fun nod, and this movie takes place in Maine. All the license plates have Maine on it. Stephen King is wont to do. In fact, it was filmed in 3 locations in Maine, in Harmony, the city of Harmony, Bangor, and Corina, Maine, which I found fascinating for them to film on location. It's I don't know, I feel like it's becoming less common these days when the soundstage is so much more reliable and forgiving and cheap.
Too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you don't have to worry about, keeping locals away or making sure it's not raining and all of that crap. Probably having to do a lot of ADR and things in post when you're filming outside and stuff. So, like I said, this is based on a Stephen King short story, but it was actually released under his pen name, his nom de plume, Richard Bachman. He has a pseudonym that he released a lot of his books, including Thinner and this one, Graveyard Shift. So it's fun because the movie opens with a mill, the Bachman Mill, named after Richard Bachman.
His pseudonym.
Yeah, it's fun that way. So I don't know. Did you want to talk about anything else about the history or the context before we get into the recap for things?
I did read the Wikipedia bit, and it's apparently the first textile mill in the United States or something.
Really?
Something like that. This is Wikipedia, so it could have been just.
What was this particular mill that they filmed at?
I think so.
Wow, that's cool.
So.
That was in Harmony.
Yeah, I could be making this up, but
Wikipedia is usually pretty good about that. Cool. So the first textile mill. That's great. That answers a question that I didn't know is, what the heck mill is this? I don't know what they're making. It's textiles. What are textiles?
You get a bunch of cotton, you make some fabric-y stuff.
Is that it? And
I
it just
think
makes
so.
clothes?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, yeah, that's what we see is and that's the cool thing that I like about movies and books and all of that is these authors or these writers will really dive into a world that I literally don't know anything about. I didn't even know it was textiles, but it's so cool in that first opening, B-roll of like seeing all the threads going through, seeing the machines that make that turn the like raw wool into thread and things. And I just imagined reading the short story and Stephen King, going into vast detail about what this is like because, he does the research and that's world building. So that was really cool in those first few moments. And then we pan down to see it's not the basement. It's like they call it he calls it that machine is called something.
Yeah.
It's what actually turns the big giant burlap sacks full of just loose wool into fine threads, and it's got these big
wool
teeth.
or cotton?
Or is it cotton?
Yeah, I think it's cotton.
Oh, okay, that makes way more sense because there weren't any sheep or anything
Right.
anywhere. Okay, so down below the main textile mill is this giant monster of a machine with teeth that you just toss wool into, and cotton. Thank you. You toss cotton into, and it does the job for you. And we meet who I thought was going to be our antagonist. He doesn't even have a name, but he's down there talking to the rats and abusing them. And there's this one moment in the beginning that there's something that I want to hammer on throughout this movie is that for me, horror and scares and gross out things, less is more. And so, like, this very first moment where the guy is, like, mad and he looks at the temperature and he sees it's 100 degrees and he's like, God damn. And he hits the post and there's a nail sticking out there. Oh, my God. I, like, cringed and I shouted out loud. And I was like, that was, like, within 3 minutes of the movie starting. And I thought to myself, oh, I love little things like that. Tiny stuff. Like, at some point later, there's, like, a woman who falls downstairs and she's like paralyzed because she like broke her neck or something, and the rats start pooling around her, and I was freaking out because I was like, oh my God, she's gonna be eaten slowly to death by this thing. But then the big monster, it scoops her up and gives her a nice quick death anyway. So I was disappointed by that. But
I was more disappointed about how clumsily she fell.
Yeah, jeez. Well, was she wearing like heels or something? I don't remember. This place is falling apart too. So anyway, this guy has like a relationship with the rats, a bad one, and he throws one into the thing. Like he does it all the time.
What they're capable of.
Just to teach them a lesson. Yeah, these sentient rats. But I thought, like, how does he not get fired? Like blood.
Right, it's gonna mess up the entire cotton thing.
Exactly. Like I'd have to imagine it ruins the machine if a rat falls in there.
It's now just dyed red, the whole thing.
Exactly. And it's full of like, bubonic plague crap. It was really funny because when they show him down there with all the rats, my mind went, oh, he's there to make sure rats don't fall in there. And he's the one tossing them.
That's his job.
And then, someone sneaks up on him and he thinks it's the foreman, but then he gets eaten by, we don't know what. So my goal going forward is to make sure that these recaps stay nice and tight. So help me out here. Let's see. After he dies, we get the main story that is this drifter has rolled into town and he needs a job.
College boy.
Yeah, college boy. We don't really know much about him except that everyone in town makes fun of him for being a good-looking guy and probably smart. So he tries to get a job at the mill, and that's where he meets the womanizing monster Warwick. Mr. Warwick or just Warwick.
Although in one scene, Mr. Foreman.
And then Mr. Foreman, played by Stephen Macht, who I don't recognize from anything. Maybe you all do. Maybe older listeners out there recognize him from something. But yeah, so before that, though, we saw Brad Dourif flushing out some rats into the river gleefully, just to establish that, he's the exterminator. And so, long story short, the foreman gives the new guy the job, and he starts working. Let's see, what's the? I got the deaths here. I want to make sure I hit those. So one day, the foreman overhears one of his employees mocking him to the other coworkers, and he's doing an impression, and he's like, "Oh, bravo!" and comes over, and he tells him that he needs help cleaning the basement, which is this place that the foreman paid this other guy off to say. Some inspector came by and said, no one can come down here. This is unsafe. And the foreman gave him $200 and said, just forget about it. So now the foreman sends everyone he hates into the cellar, into the basement to clean this honestly, it looks like a job that will never be done. There's so
so
much.
dirty, yeah.
I don't understand. There's just chairs. There's like 100 wooden chairs.
It's so big,
and like
too.
a desk, and it goes on for like miles, and it's wet. It's constantly wet. So anyway, he sends.
And this was kind of weird. He said it's a fire hazard, even though it's like damp and wet.
I don't know how anything could catch on fire down there.
Yeah.
And then there's like the like wine cellar when they go even further down. But I'm getting ahead of myself because the guy doing impressions, his punishment is to go down to the cellar where, sure enough, he gets eaten by the beast that we see, which. I don't know if you noticed, but what he does is he's like, messing with this mass of what looks like, more cotton and things. And then like the wing opens up. Mm-hmm. He's like touching the bat rat thing. So the monster in the movie is, it's like a combination of a giant rat with a giant bat.
I think it just might be a giant bat.
But it's definitely got a rat tail.
Okay, that's right. Well, do bats have?
They don't have long tails like that.
Okay.
Like wormy, big long tails.
Okay.
Prehensile things. So yeah. It's not really explained at all.
Nothing.
Honestly, it would be better if it was just a rat because the bat part makes no sense at all. And so anyway, the guy making the impression dies. He gets like suffocated by the leathery wings or something, or eaten. But I thought that was cool.
Or he gets dragged underwater. And,
oh, is that it? Okay, yeah. Because the bat also swims.
Yep.
Bat rat swims. Because rats swim, I guess. They do that. And we do see a lot of footage of that, despite the thing at the end saying that no animals were harmed. It seemed like a lot of rats were harmed. Cause,
maybe not.
Well, because so the drifter is John Hall, played by David Andrews, and he abuses the rats when he the first night he's down there. So the movie's called Graveyard Shift because the basement room that he has to work in with this giant teeth machine is so hot that they have to do it during 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The Graveyard Shift. Roll credits. So one day while he's down there, he sees some rats and he takes out Diet Pepsi. It's like product placement. Yeah. Seriously, I don't know.
If you're trying to get rats out of your basement, use Diet Pepsi.
Why would Diet Pepsi approve that?
I don't know if they have.
To show off. I don't know if it helped them. But anyway, yeah, he uses a slingshot and he's really good with full cans of soda.
What's weird is that his first day he brings that in.
Yeah, he had like a bag of sodas. Like he knew, I'm going to get thirsty. Yeah. And he brought the slingshot. That's right. So yeah,
I'm assuming that's his first day. Maybe he had a day before that we didn't see.
That's true. Yeah. Where he was like, I really wish I had my slingshot and some soda cans. That'd really make the time fly. So it's funny. It's worth mentioning that the Graveyard Shift idea of working all night and just trying to survive the night. It's like, well, I need money. The universal thing of you're probably in a really bad place, so you're willing to do whatever it takes to make some money. Makes me think of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I have to wonder if Scott Cawthon, is that his name? Cawthorn?
Never saw it.
Something like that. Oh, it's a video game. And I have to wonder if he wasn't referencing or influenced by this in particular, but by that idea, because I feel like it's common. I definitely wouldn't ever want to work a graveyard shift.
Yeah, it's weird that we don't really know what he's running away from. It's clear that John Hall is running away from town to town. He was a cook in Florida. He was some other things.
But we never find out.
We never find out what's...
he could be a murderer for all we know.
Yeah,
he doesn't seem like it.
Yeah,
but...
he prevented some violence.
Yeah.
All that.
But the best murderers don't seem like it. So then he has John Hall has a small conversation with the exterminator, played by Brad Dourif, who reveals that he's a war veteran from Vietnam. He's a Vietnam vet, and he might not have come back completely there because he describes. I don't know if this is real because Stephen King has this history of taking one nugget of fact history and using that to expand it into a world of fantasy and horror.
And it's possible that he's saying this is how this veteran remembers it.
That's true. That's true. He's definitely not a reliable narrator at all. So what he explains is that the Viet Cong had this tactic of using rats to
torture.
Was it just for torture?
I think
because it sounded like he was reward. He said they would use them and then they would do it for a reward for a nice warm meal. What would that be? Try American warm meal, thank you, whatever.
Yes. So they would.
Rats don't want hot meals.
No. But that's he's referring to the
torture.
To their what he thought were their allies as rats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get
And
that.
then they turn to the Viet Cong for a warm meal.
I get you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then, all right, because that gets confusing. Because then he explains the
And then
literal
he's actually
rats.
talking about literal rats.
Yeah, because then what he explains is yes, they use them for torture. In that they would take a prisoner of war and cut them open non-lethally, but just enough that a rat could fit in there, and then it would crawl around and eat them from the inside and just be all kinds of unpleasant. But how does he connect that to? Oh, that's right. And he implies that the rats here are the same ones, or at least connected in some way, that he's been dealing with these for the last 20 years, and it's the same.
Yeah, and he's saying like, oh, I put poison, or what do they call it, like field poison or something like that, and they just drink it and piss it out or something like that.
Yeah, that they're like tougher
Yeah.
or whatever. And I guess like the long-reaching thing is that because they have a king or a queen or whatever, there's no explanation for the rat bat monster thing. And there's this like cloud of mystery around the foreman that makes you think he's in on it and he's like feeding it or
I
something.
thought that was kind of cool.
But that
like,
never
yeah.
comes to pass because he's definitely surprised by it
Yeah.
just as much as they are. So the next death after that, the foreman I mentioned he's a womanizing monster because he has a history of throwing himself at his female coworkers. Specifically, Nordello is one of the female employees there, and Nordello is told that she, because he rebuked her because she rebuked his advances, she's put on the cleanup crew, which is that terrible basement thing because now he hates her. So she breaks his car to bits with an axe in public, in full view of all the other employees, to which the foreman comes out and almost beats the crap out of her. He's basically like about to hit her.
Swing, yeah.
And then John shows up. John Hall grabs his wrist and says, stop this. Then the foreman realizes what he's doing, realizes how much he hates John, and Jane, who's another employee at the mill who gave John a ride home, the foreman saw, didn't like that.
And he's clearly wants to get with Jane, the foreman.
Yeah.
So that's
The foreman
some
wants to get with
jealousy going
Jane.
on.
John wants to get with Jane. Everybody wants to get with Jane.
Yep.
So, unfortunately, Nordello is told to do the cleanup crew. She goes down, falls down the stairs extremely clumsily because there are rats around her feet.
Well, she does that, so she tries to sneak in back. She gets laid off, and then she tries to sneak in
That's
back
right. Thank you. Yeah.
and steal the file that like shows that he paid off the inspector.
Yeah.
So
She implies during the beating that she's about to get that she knows too much and that she can't be fired. And the foreman says, screw you. You don't know anything. You're fired. That's right. So then she comes back trying to blackmail him to get the info that she knows. And then
falls down the stairs.
rats make her fall down the stairs. And this is the moment where, she's paralyzed. She can't get up. It looks like she's, she might suffocate like on her own blood or whatever, and then the rat bat gets her and scoops her out, which was kind of disappointing. I was hoping for the slow, like
little rats.
like little rats just eating her alive.
I also like that she bled from the fall, and then like you see the rats coming to it, so it's like
Exactly. That was
they have
implied.
a taste for blood.
Yeah, that was showed early when the first character dies at the very beginning. All the rats love eating the blood that he made and the juice and things. The next death I have on here is Cleveland. Who's Cleveland? Okay, well, anyway, let's try to walk this movie. Let's try to walk it back. Okay, so now that I've gone through my memory, what happens after that is the foreman tells John Hall that now he's going to be on the...
he gives him this like, you could earn some extra money.
Yeah, like,
I like the way you work, man.
Yeah, he tries to sell him that. Yeah, not that I hate you and you're definitely going to die from this. It's, hey, you could make some extra money. And you make sure to punctuate it with a big, giant apple bite.
Yeah, everything he says is sinister. It sounds like... And he also is like, thank you for stopping me. I would have done something terrible.
Yeah, just lying through his teeth. And it looks like John can, tell, but he must really need the money, I guess.
Money, yeah.
That's such a, just a plot thing that's like, well, why would he do this? Oh, he really needed the money. So So there was one other character that got introduced, Carmichael, another gentleman who happens to be black, showed up and said, "Hey, I heard you were needing some work." And the foreman looks at him and he's like, "Oh yeah, you'd make a perfect sacrifice," with his eyes, kind of thing. But
every word sinister.
Yeah.
Something about him.
But that never gets played on, like, really. So anyway, the team is okay. So the bald guy that's on the team, I thought it was the same dude who got suffocated and drowned.
Yeah.
I was so confused when this guy showed up. Are there two bald guys?
Are there? I thought there was only just the one who got like dragged down by the.
Okay, I'm not even gonna bother with that one because I was so confused. But anyway, so there's a bald guy, Brogan, who is the big guy with the fire hose, who's screaming all the time.
So this fire hose is how they kill the rats. This is high pressure like fire hose.
It's like, it looks like it would take like the skin off of you. It's like a real
power
fire
washer,
hose. Because like he uses it on a desk and it just obliterates the desk when they when there are rats in it. And then like Carmichael, the black guy, is like, "Hey man, you could have like killed me," and he starts spraying his feet like, "Ha ha ha." Dude, he could like take his feet off.
Yeah.
I thought like that was so And John Hall comes over and he's like, "Hey, cut that out." And then they've apparently like magically cleared out enough space that they find a hatch, like a trap door, they call it.
Well, actually, before that, I think is when the bald guy, I don't remember his name.
I don't remember either.
He's like, "Hey, he has this weird speech of like, hey, I just want to get this money and get out of here," sort of thing. Let's not
That's
fight,
right. That's right. Brogan and Carmichael, are having their little. They sprayed each other. John comes over and tells Brogan, "Hey, you don't want to do that." And it looks like it's over. Like it's not escalating any further. But the bald guy comes between them and is like, "Hey guys, cool it. I just want to get some money." And he's the one that escalates it. And then the foreman shows up again out of nowhere. He always just like appears, and he's like, "Ooh, that trap door looks pretty interesting."
Well, first, he's like, we didn't get paid to exterminate the rats. We just here to clean. And then the foreman's like, "Oh, is that how everybody feels, or just you?" "Just me." "All right, get out of here."
That's right. He sends him out. It's like everyone who doesn't go down in the cellar gets to go home early.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
They get to live.
Yeah.
No money.
Yeah. So Carmichael, Brogan, the foreman, and Jane all go down into the cellar. Oh, and one more, Jason.
Oh, it's Brogan who gets pulled down by the.
He's the one that falls into the water. Yeah.
He's the one who drowns.
So they climb down. They have like little lanterns and stuff, and if you can believe it, it's actually wetter down here. All of the wood is like falling apart, pretty realistically. Like the stairs are.
It's really well done.
It's cool, and it really feels like God, you can't really step anywhere safely. Because there appears to be like a further drop there, and there is. Because what happens is Brogan falls through the floor into water that's already like bright red. They got scared by something. He tried running up the stairs and they fell apart. So now there's no way to get back out. But he fell even further through the floor into this pool that's already red with, I assume, the blood of millions of rats and people and things. And he gets eaten or pulled under by something. We can't really tell, but something down there is swimming around. And the foreman bolts, and John, tries to help in any way he can. They're like 2 stories up or something. They can't.
It seems like the foreman kind of tries to go around it, maybe find another way.
Is that it? Okay.
So.
Well, his friend Jason comes with him and accuses him. It's like, you let him die.
Right.
And Carmichael's with him too. So so Jane and John are together. Carmichael, Jason, and the foreman are together, and they try going up this slope where they find a little hole. Carmichael, for no reason, reaches his arm through because he thinks
he hears there's like a river.
He's like, "Oh, the river's through here. I think we can break through." And he's like, he reaches his arm through, and my arm! Of course, the other 2 leave. They don't help him. His arm is like a chunk. It's so funny. He's like swinging it around, and you can see some of the chunks of flesh like fly on the other actors, and they're like, and then the rest of him gets eaten once again by an unseen. We already like kind of know what it is at this point, even though we still haven't gotten a full.
We haven't seen his face.
No. But we've seen like a really cool like blink. That was a really cool shot. And like we've seen its 2 like bat claws on a couple of things. So now that's Carmichael's dead. Jason and the foreman are left, and Jason is in shock. he's absolutely panicking, and he, after falling through one more thing, goes, no more, and he's screaming. He's like, I'm not going, I can't do it anymore. And the foreman's like, all right, stay here. And Foreman goes running off to find some weapons.
Foreman kind of goes a little bit crazy too. He's like, it's John who did this.
That's right.
You need to kill him or something like that.
Because he finds some wine or some alcohol or something down there. And yeah, this is like, if you weren't sure he was crazy yet, this is the moment where he rubs the
charcoal
residue off of the bottles onto his face and then says, yeah, we're going to go back there and we got to kill John. And they're like, what? Forget John. You got to kill whatever monster was back there. And he's like, no, I got to kill John. And he's got a knife. So he's full crazy. John and Jane are trying to find their way out. They end up sharing a kiss for no reason once they fall through a wall or whatever. And she's pretty hurt. And the foreman falls through another pit into a giant mountain of bones. And bones are hard. Bones are sharp. Like, this is my skull. It's not easy to crack. And so I thought he was just dead when he fell into all those bones. Like, oh, he was probably just like stabbed by some jagged things or whatever. And so do Jane and John when they find him. He like reaches out and they're like, oh my God, he's in really bad shape. He's got a big
help him.
Cut on his head. We should help him. But surprise, he's fully aware and takes out his knife and is trying to kill Jane at first. John stops him, and they're beating the crap out of each other. It's honestly a pretty good fight, where some of them are using like jawbones to hit the other dude. One point he has like the foreman has a rotted skull and smashes it on John's head, which I think like my skull is hard. Having another skull break on my skull can't feel good. But then I never expected this to happen. Jane shows up and smashes the foreman on the back of the head, which I did expect. But then in the struggle, the foreman turns around and stabs Jane to death. She dies. Right. And the foreman gets away. I mean, he hobbles away to another location. But yeah, Jane dies. And John mourns her for a moment. I don't know. What do you think of that?
It was kind of unexpected because I thought, they were both going to live and then fight the monsters. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. I expected the final shot to be, like a crane pulling away of them arm in arm and the, mill on fire or something like that. But no, John is the only one because Warwick, the foreman, hobbles away and things, but eventually runs into the rat bat, and we see it in its full glory. I was really hoping we would see its full wingspan, and that's when it occurred to me, why is a bat this big in the mines? What is the point of it being a bat? It doesn't drink anyone's blood.
It doesn't use the wings.
It doesn't use the wings. It could be a rat. It could just be a rat. Yeah. He gets his last big hurrah moment for no one. He was a villain. Why does he get a hurrah?
Well, I like that he's like, we're both going to hell or something
together.
Like that.
Yeah. So
he knows he's a bad guy.
Yeah. And then he's so stupid. He stabs it in the wing and does nothing. Goes straight through and he dies. So the last one. So everyone's dead except for John. And John manages to crawl his way back to the very same room that we started in with the big giant...
Apparently it was just to the right.
It was just right there. Yeah, this big teeth measure. Oh my God, don't get me started on the geography of this movie where one thing is supposed to be... God, because it looks like it would take...
I can't figure out the layout. I tried to, what's going on here?
No, and the fact that they all fall into it makes me think there is no way humans get back up. It must be wet, or it's tiny crevices and things like that. But he makes it out, and then he's holding his gut, and he just he looks exhausted because what he does is he climbs an elevator shaft with the hose from they had earlier, and when he gets to the top, he looks exhausted, and he's falling on the cotton and the rats are pooling around him, and once again I was thinking oh, he's too exhausted to swat the rats away. This is going to be a real thing. But then he gets up because the rat bat bursts its head through the wall. Apparently now it doesn't care about being below or anything. Now it just wants to get him, and its tail falls into the teeth measure thing, and that's when John remembers his skill of being able to launch Diet Pepsi cans at...
He looks at the button, he's like, oh, and then he sees the can of Pepsi, he's like, wait a minute.
He puts two and two together. It's like Chekhov's skill. So he misses a couple of times, which we've never seen before. No. And then on the last one, it's all slow-mo, and they remove some frames, and it looks really weird. And the rat the tail almost gets out, but then it turns on, and sure enough, over what I want to say is a full 60 seconds of screaming, like just intense. I was just like, oh my god, it's still happening, of the giant rat bat just getting ground by this mesher thing.
And cotton extractor.
Yeah, that's it. And it extracts all the blood and guts from the rat bat. And then all its little, children, all its little rats are eating it gleefully. And then it fades to the sign for Bachman Mills under new management. Mm-hmm. And then it just fades out from that to black to the credits. And then the credits.
The credits are amazing.
The credits have this like theme song for the movie, but it's like all the words are just dialogue lifted from the movie.
Badass thing.
It's so weird. I want to see if I could if I can get some of it to come out of this. Because like we were mentioning, it has the same like vague African rhythm of that song by Tears for Fears. Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's like a tuk 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 tuk. Let's see if I can get it loud enough.
Damn! The graveyard. Oh God, this is bad. Infrastructure. All American.
So why is this?
Maybe.
It makes me think it's like a sequence out of the Jungle Book or something like the orangutans are gonna do. So yeah, that's the movie, Graveyard Shift. Stephen King's Graveyard Shift. Even though Stephen King's Graveyard Shift in book form doesn't exist, it's Richard Bachman's Stephen King, or it's Richard Bachman's Graveyard Shift.
And it was a short story. It wasn't even a full...
Yeah, I'm always amazed by Hollywood's ability to take a very, very short story and expand it into an hour and a half without filling in any necessary things like why it's a bat and why the foreman is so mysterious about it. I don't know. What were like... So after the recap, I like to go through and, as you know, talk about, some of the themes and things that happened in this movie that, beyond just plot, made it enjoyable or not enjoyable. So what did you get out of it?
Yeah, I was really looking for...
You wrote some things down.
I wrote some things down. I was really looking for like a theme or something like some sort of moral or something like that, but I couldn't really get any of that here.
Yeah.
I was trying to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I guess it's be nice to your coworker or your employees.
But not even.
Not even.
Yeah. Don't mess with rats, I guess. Is that kind of...
Respect nature?
Maybe.
Because there wasn't even like we moved in on their territory, kind of line. This isn't like a consequence for anyone's like hubris. No. Is it like because the one guy was killing rats?
Maybe. I mean...
And so everyone's being punished?
There was also like a scene where like they specifically asked that exterminator to flood the place.
Yeah.
And so that's how it got wet. He was just flooding it for...
Oh, okay. And that pissed off... But there were like millions of bones down there.
No, this was happening for a while before this even happened.
So like... I feel like one line about there being like, oh yeah, we struck ground and there was, some issues from the natives or I don't know, just like anything. I don't know.
Oh, there's also a graveyard right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When he tells Brad Dourif, the exterminator, he's like, you ever been to an actual graveyard? And there's just, I remember I turned to my boyfriend and I said, where is he? When did he get to an actual graveyard next door to the mill? Is that a thing? Maybe that's a thing, that it's like, oh, people died in the mill being chewed up, like in the machinery and stuff, that they just had a graveyard nearby. Is that an Industrial Revolution thing?
Maybe.
Because there were definitely some moving parts that I was like, oh my God, he's like right there. Loose-fitting clothes. He's dead.
Yeah. There's also like, it seems like the foreman knew that, I'm going to send him to the graveyard and then he'll die.
Yeah, he knew that he...
And the way he died was weird, because like a grave fell on him.
Yeah, right? I forgot about that. So the exterminator, he goes to a graveyard because the foreman knows he would die there, and his dog, which his dog's name is Moxie, it's a rat terrier. So when his rat terrier Moxie goes into like this mausoleum, or is it's just like a hole?
I don't know.
It's like, so he goes into a mausoleum, catacomb, whatever, and he ends up getting behind this big giant... like casket, stone casket, and yeah, it's great because it's like, oops, the floor is shifting. Oh no, I'm safe. And then it's like, oops, it shifted again. Oh no, I'm safe.
Oh, like his head crushed, and then, like,
and
it
then
falls.
oops, sorry. Yeah, and I thought, yeah, it crushed his head, but he's still alive. He's still alive, and God damn it. And it just grinds him down the wall because it was like mud. And like, yeah, it didn't exactly. God, that's what I mean, man. It's like less is more. I really like that. Let's see. I already mentioned the Rat Terrier. I already mentioned the Bachman Mills. I already mentioned the nail slam. Oh, and that puddle of rat pee. That he names that rat Doris in the beginning, and it leaves a puddle of pee like twice its size.
Oh, Doris!
And he cleans it up with the same hand that he hit with the nails. So he's got an open wound, and he's cleaning the rat pee with it.
I mean, I guess it's sterile. I was thinking about that the entire time.
It doesn't matter. He doesn't last much longer after that. But God, I don't know. Like what themes. The theme of like.
So I tried to date it. I tried to like say, when did this take place, and a couple of things kind of the clearest sign was the Vietnam War, and the Exterminator was about 40.
Okay.
So if you go back, it does take place around 1990.
Okay, so it's supposed to be like present day for when the movie is
somewhere around there. Yeah. So
I wonder if that mill's still there in Maine, or if textile mills are a thing.
I think they're shutting down all over the country, or the few ones that do exist.
I'm sure there are people right now screaming at their podcast that they know everything about textiles, and how can we be so stupid?
Nothing.
And if that's you, please tweet at us. I want to learn all about this world. God, let's see. I didn't write anything down because theme of just being nice to. Yeah, it's like
no morals. I couldn't really take any morals out of it.
And typically there's like, it's man versus nature, man versus man versus society, man versus self, man versus machine. This you could say is man versus man, in that it's the foreman, it's John fighting an insane person's ego in the foreman. But it's also man versus nature, in that the rat bat lives there and owns the place, and they're abusing the rats, and that makes it mad. Man versus machine? No, not really. Man versus self. Maybe the foreman has some internal monologues that we don't get. Man versus society. Nothing.
I mean, they're kind of remote. Like, maybe these are outcasts.
They seem kind of backwater too. Like, I don't mean to. This is just my interpretation of the characters in the movie. I don't know what textile mills education, rates are like, but they seem dumb. They all seem pretty dumb as rocks and ignorant and the worst kind of stupid. Because I don't care if one is stupid. I care if they're the kind of stupid that just makes them shout at people at a fucking diner. When we're just by ourselves, enjoying ourselves, some dude comes over to look at the job board, and I just can't help myself from calling them all kinds of epithets and questioning their heterosexuality and things, right up until they leave, saying, "Goodbye, Girl Scout."
And that anyway, in the movie.
That's literally what they do. And then as soon as he's gone, they're like, well, I guess that didn't work. Anyway, you got to see this cow I saw. It was enormous. And it's just like, oh my God, there really are just toxic people like that. And you can see that moment where John realizes, oh, crap, this is the same place that those idiots work at. And he tries to leave, but then it's too late.
And it was like a lot of sexual harassment. I thought that would be like a theme or something like that, but nothing really came out of it.
Basically just the foreman. No, everyone's doing it. Everyone's kind of like sexually harassing women everywhere they go. And the three women that work there is the assistant, and Nordello and Jane. I don't think there's any others. It's just the three of them.
There's also like the waitress.
Yeah, there's the waitress that works at the diner that they all work at that gets grabbed. And it's so funny. Things like that jump out to me now. Like, they're not just like, oh, local color. It's, what a terrible person. What a terrible place. I think that's important. I don't want to go back to that being normal. I don't want that to be just local color, unless it's to color how terrible this place is, And maybe that's it, because he is an outsider drifter.
Yeah, and he seems like the only moral one of the... Yeah. Well, maybe not the only, but...
And maybe that's just a result of it being from a short story that he never really gets fleshed out. Like, I I have a hard time rooting for him because I don't know anything
don't know
about him
anything.
other than that he does what I would do, which is the good thing.
Yeah.
Or he just does his job.
Right.
Yeah, so
He's not an asshole, so that's kind of what you're rooting for him.
no, it's funny. The more I think about this, why did I like this movie? It doesn't have a lot going for it.
I mean, visually, is
I
nice.
guess, and like plot-wise, it's simple and easy to follow, and it's got those mini feminist elements of it that I can go like, oh,
Yeah. But it doesn't it doesn't use that as a
it doesn't
plot
use
device. or
what does it
anything. Yeah, I
use?
don't know.
It just uses these popsicle stick characters to meander around until it's time for them to die. Like nothing progresses.
Right, the
there's
characters
no
don't develop
goal.
as- yeah.
No, it's just the foreman putting people he doesn't like into situations where they'll die. The movie, and until he dies,
Yeah.
and then under new management, did John stay?
I don't know.
That ending thing doesn't mean anything to
Yeah,
me.
I think it's just like a joke. Like, oh, things are different now.
Because this movie's so funny.
Yeah.
That's another thing is like there's not as much humor. Like I say that like horror movies have a lot of humor typically in the first act to soften up their audience,
Yeah.
but the
It's
first
just like a bit, but not really.
and it was just like they eliminate any mystery in the beginning when the guy dies,
Yeah.
and it's like we know it's not another person. I thought it would have been really nice if it was like a question for a while if Warwick was the guy who pushed him in.
And I think that kind of was supposed to be part of it, but we clearly see in the beginning
That it's not him because he goes,
He's-
"I know it's you, Warwick." Turns around, and then there's a flash of goo.
Right.
And that's another thing. Like I get that it's really wet down there, but this is the thing for just like all movie monsters. Why are movie monsters constantly oozing
Yep.
and dripping like thick globs of goo? Like they're always wet.
Always.
They're always drippy wet. Is it because just like on film, it doesn't look as like the plastic doesn't look as
Maybe,
good
yeah,
unless
maybe-
it's shimmering and glistening with goo?
maybe like you could see it more plasticky if it's not there, and then you're not focused on the costume or something. You're
That's
just seeing
all.
the-
That's what I've believed because it's a thing that I'm so annoyed with all the time. It makes sense for creatures like the Thing, where they're like a biological, entity that's brand new, like a newborn baby. It's gooey, but a rat bat, it's like drooling from its ears. There's so much drool. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's not even like the kind of like watery, like alien scary drool. It's just these long, nonsensical globs. Yeah.
Oh, there actually was a bit of humor, or I don't know if I would go that. Yeah, it was humor, and now that I remember, there is some animal cruelty. Is they start playing the Beach Boys? Let's go.
Oh yeah. I laughed at that, because it shows the rats on little
Like
pieces
surfing.
of wood,
Yeah.
like surfing. But then it's it's subverted to show that they're just torturing them,
Right, they're torturing these rats.
and
yeah.
so that's not harm. Those rats weren't harmed in the making of this movie. I thought I was seeing animals being harmed.
Yeah,
it
maybe like they put the rats on these things and gently floated them.
maybe they're
into-
special swimming rats,
Yeah.
like
I mean, rats can swim.
Yeah, but it's like on a movie when you need animals, like you have to go through like the proper channels of like, we are an animal handler, and this is what this animal can do. This is what
perfectly
it can't
safe for
do.
this,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so a lot of them, that's something I want to bring attention to is the rats in this movie were actually really well behaved and actually like carried some emotional relevance and like depth for me. Anytime they would show like they were like 3 or 4 rats just kind of looking down, I never felt. Maybe it's the director, but I never really felt like, oh, it's just here's some B-roll of rats. It's like, no, those rats are acting and
Yeah.
they are in this scene.
Yeah, they're really like well trained, except for like one of them who always seemed nice. Like the other one seemed menacing.
Yeah. There's that when they're surfing, when they're playing Beach Boys. There's like 4 or 5 rats on one piece of wood, and they all capsize together. I couldn't help but laugh. I thought it was cute, but then I was like, "Oh, those poor rats. I hope
Yeah.
they're okay."
Yeah. So that was the only piece of humor. I wonder how much they cost to get that.
Oh my god!
So-
The rat budget for this movie. I wonder what
The
it
rap
was.
budget and then the Beach Boys song budget.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. We're getting close to the rating here. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I think That's about it.
Okay. Well, here on the Gory Days, we like to rate the movies that we watch on a scale. Oh,
one more thing. The other. So I was trying to date this movie, and so the Vietnam reference was the closest. But there was also a mention of the Manson family. And
that's right.
Yeah.
What year would that have been? Like popular?
I mean,
well after by that time.
Yeah. The Vietnam
I'm trying to
thing
think.
is,
Like, I bet you could tell by their cars. I don't really know cars, but I bet you could tell by that too.
But they could also been like just,
Vintage. Yeah. Maybe some like 70s coupe or
it
something.
seems like the foreman's car was like that.
Definitely the one that gets obliterated.
Right,
Yeah. He loved that car too. So it's probably a classic or something.
Right. But yeah, so I guess 1990s. But I would have liked to have seen something more definitive.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen any kind of progression for any one of these characters, but you can't progress a drifter when we don't know where he's starting. No. We literally don't know anything about any of these characters except that Jane is from Castle Rock. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah, that's we kind of like her because she's decent.
Because she's played by Jane, played by Kelly Wolfe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So on the Gory Days, we like to rate the movies that we see on a rating of 1 to 5 thumbs, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. What'd you think of this movie?
Oh, man. So I really liked a lot of the lighting. I thought there was some good camera shots in there. But it's still a 1. Like, I really didn't like any of the plot. I thought it was kind of simple, and it didn't go anywhere, and that's something I really care about. So, sorry, but I'm going with a 1 thumb for Graveyard Shift.
And who does that thumb belong to? We like to gift our thumbs to characters from the movies.
Who does it? I think it was the Maxie, the terrier.
Oh, Moxie, the rat terrier?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Graveyard Shift. Stephen King's Graveyard Shift from 1990. It looks great. Like, to Mike's point, it a lot of the time the quality of the movie can turn me off right from the beginning. And maybe it's just because it was in the 90s and that's, when I grew up. And so that kind of film grain I respond to, and it's still normal for me.
Really nice,
yeah. So it looks amazing. And the actors in it are all pretty great. Even the foreman, it's just they don't have anything to do and they don't have anywhere to go or grow. Even the rat bat doesn't get its proper explanation or even its time in the spotlight, and we just don't get enough. There are so many just open threads. It makes me think that this was who is this? This movie is for people who like horror movies, but I think it's also for people who read the book or the short story. Maybe the short story expands on a lot of the just set pieces that we see. The fact that this is a mine shaft that goes down 4 floors or whatever into the ground. There's just too many questions. And usually if a movie can set up enough actual movie, then the questions are bonus. It's ooh, whoa, I wonder what they meant with that, or loose threads aren't necessarily a bad thing,
right?
But this is
some mystery, but this
is all mystery, right. This is loose thread the movie. And so with that in mind, unfortunately I'm not going to give it a 1 because I haven't seen a worse movie this week.
I'm sure, yeah.
So I'll give it 2, and it's a reluctant 2 because it's it's so bizarre. It almost fooled me. It looks like a good movie,
great,
and it feels like a good movie. But when you think about it, nothing happened, and it was a waste of my time.
We just saw a bunch of people get killed by a bat, and then the bat died.
And then the bat died. I give it 2 thumbs, and I'm going to give those thumbs to Doris, the rat from the beginning, who's not a woman, who's far from a woman, unclassy. Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody, to the Gory Days. We'll be here every week, Tuesday, or no, what is it, Wednesdays? I don't know, someday during the middle of the week. Tune in next time. We'll be talking about a brand new movie. I don't know what it is yet, but if you follow us on Twitter or Instagram at the Gory Days, you can find out. And be sure to let us know what you think of this week's, last week's, and future episodes so that you can get your tweets and comments read on the podcast. Any final thoughts, Mike?
No, just thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
It's always a pleasure. See you next time. Stay scary out there.
The Gory Days.
If you want your thoughts on each week's movies heard on the podcast, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at The Gory Days, and look for more episodes each and every week on the Apple Podcast app. See you next time.
The Gory Days.